All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. We're going to be talking about what is advocacy. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So my name is Elisa Lapolt, and I've been doing advocacy now for NAMI, Tennessee for 4 years. And a lot of people have different ideas of what advocacy is. And what we want to do today is explore some things. So I want to give you some examples of advocacy. What is lobbying versus advocacy? Because some people tend to confuse the two, and they're very distinct differences. We're going to talk about nonprofit advocacy. So if you have a nonprofit that you work with, or you're one of our NAMI affiliates, you'll understand what you can and cannot do. Also, the importance of individual advocacy and using storytelling as advocacy. And then I'm going to give you some tips for doing advocacy well. So the first thing is, what is advocacy? The definition is taking public action to support or oppose a mission or a cause. So this could look like legislation, a ballot initiative, an election, and it's standing up and taking that action. So at NAMI, we talk a lot about mental health advocacy, and the way we define that is telling your story so you can influence change, reduce stigma, and make a difference for others with mental health conditions. So, what is advocacy? It takes on different meanings because you can have what's called legal advocacy. Some bar associations and states have divisions that provide legal advocates to advocate for you in court or through the justice system. There are patient advocates. In other words, a hospital might have a patient advocate to help you and your family navigate the hospital system or the healthcare system. But for mental health advocacy and what we do at NAMI, we're going to talk about advocacy in the mental health area, little bit of politics, but then we're also going to get into some other places where you can do good advocacy. So advocacy could look like this: attending a rally. This is Florida, Tallahassee, Florida, where I lived. And this is a rally by parents after the school shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. And the parents and the students and the communities came to Tallahassee, and they were advocating for changes in gun laws. And by the way, they did get some of those changes. But advocacy can take on different forms. It could still be part of the political process, advocating to your legislator. So the gentleman in the middle is Representative David Hogg from my hometown of Greene County, Greenville. And these are members of NAMI Greene County who came and spoke with him during our day on the Hill to advocate for better mental health policies, some laws we were looking at. And so these are two examples of political advocacy. Advocacy can also take place in your community, maybe speaking to a Rotary Club or a Kiwanis Club. Advocacy can be education. And this is a picture of the NAMI affiliate down in Jackson, Mississippi. And they were speaking to the Rotary Club members, telling them about NAMI and mental health. And that is a type of advocacy that you can do in your community. It could also mean talking to your school board. This is something I pulled off the internet, a school board meeting in Minnesota where they were talking about student mental health. And there were parents at this meeting. So parents were advocating for their kids and access to better mental health. You can actually advocate in your healthcare system, say at your local hospital. What a lot of NAMIs do is they go and meet with their hospital, the discharge planners, because ideally what we want, if somebody's in a mental health crisis, they go to the ER, we would want them to have some resources in the community for when they're discharged after the mental health crisis passes. So you could go advocate with your local hospital to say, hey, we would like to provide some resources. We'd like to be a resource. We would like to advocate for better discharge policies. So this is a great example of advocacy outside the political arena in your community. And then finally, talking with schools. We talked about school boards earlier, going into colleges, universities, K through 12. Now you'll need permission to do that, of course. But this is a great example of advocating to young people about the need for better health policies, services in their schools. The idea is that advocacy takes place in more areas than just the legislature. You can also advocate to your local county commission, your city council. There's many ways to do that. Advocacy can also take place in jails and law enforcement agencies. Where we get a lot of calls is from people, when I say we, like NAMI Tennessee and NAMI affiliates, we get calls from people who have a loved one who's incarcerated. Maybe they've been arrested for disorderly conduct, some type of behavior associated with a mental health condition. And the individual gets arrested and then they get put in jail. We get calls from families who are concerned that the individual no longer has access to their medication. And that's a big concern. So there have been some NAMI affiliates in different parts of the country that have advocated for better medication for people in jail. There's also city and county governments, which I mentioned, mental health hospitals, health insurance plans. So a lot of times we have health insurance plans that are not following laws about providing treatment for substance use disorder or treatment for mental health conditions. If they provide those services, they're supposed to do it at the same level as physical health services. And if they're not, they're violating a federal law. So there's an opportunity, and NAMI Tennessee does this as well, to advocate on behalf of people who need coverage for mental health conditions. There's an opportunity to advocate to health insurance plans and educate them about the importance of covering treatment services for mental illness. And then finally, businesses and corporations. Right now, a lot of people are quitting their jobs, as we've seen from the pandemic, the resignations that are taking place. People don't want the stress of working in stressful conditions. Corporations and business leaders are looking for opportunities to bring in wellness programs. And so you could advocate for a mental health day or mental health screenings. There's just a variety of settings where you can be an advocate. This question comes up quite a bit in my work over the years of lobbying and advocating, is what is the difference between the two? So lobbying is a type of advocacy. Advocacy covers a broad area, but as you can see, lobbying is only one part of it. All lobbying is advocacy, but not all advocacy is lobbying. Advocacy could look like some type of media campaign. There's like all different types of advocacy, education, fairs. And so lobbying is just a way to advocate. So in Tennessee, the word lobby means to communicate directly or indirectly with any official in the legislative branch or executive branch, that's the governor's office, for the purpose of influencing any legislative action or administrative action. So administrative action might be like a executive order from the governor. Like the governor issued last year after the Covenant school shooting, immediate an immediate streamlined process for FBI background checks after people purchase guns. So that was an administrative action. So lobbying could look like encouraging, the governor to do something like that, or encouraging legislators to pass a bill. I was lobbying last year with our other lobbyists to for the governor and for the legislature to create laws for extreme risk protection orders. And those are orders by the court to have firearms removed from an individual who is deemed a danger to himself or others. That was lobbying, okay? In this particular situation, I was paid as a lobbyist, and our other lobbyist, Bill Dobbins, was paid as a lobbyist. So a lobbyist means any person who engages in lobbying for compensation. So we had to register as lobbyists at the state. So when it comes to nonprofits, a lot of times it comes up, well, how can nonprofit organizations lobby? Aren't they tax exempt? Won't that jeopardize their IRS status? Well, there's a lot of laws about this, especially around the IRS. And one of the basic ones is, if you're a nonprofit, lobbying cannot be the majority of the work you do. And this is for 501c3 organizations is what we're talking about. So NAMI, Tennessee, and some of our affiliates are 501c3s. So generally, you want to keep any lobbying you do to 3 to 5%. Now, if you're an affiliate, you generally leave the lobbying to NAMI Tennessee. That is its role, is to be the voice for all the affiliates on anything policy-wise, with laws, with funding, so we can speak as one voice. But if you're with a nonprofit who get involved in some lobbying activities, you have to register with the state. There's some reports you have to file. You have to file that activity with the IRS, and there's a lot of rules. And the requirements are a bit different for bigger nonprofits. We're talking about nonprofits that spend thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars on lobbying. So nobody that's on the call today is going to be having to deal with this. So we don't have to worry about that. There are a couple different types of lobbying. These are identified by the IRS. It's direct lobbying, which is requesting legislators to take action on certain legislation. Direct lobbying would be me going to Governor Lee and saying, Governor Lee, we need to pay our mental health providers more money, and we're requesting that you pass legislation that does this. And we did that for the past 2 years. That was direct lobbying. We also do grassroots lobbying, which is urging others to contact their legislators to take action. And what that looks like is advocacy emails that we send out saying, please contact your legislators on House Bill 1636 and ask them to vote no on this bill. That's grassroots lobbying, okay? Then we get into the question of nonprofits advocacy, and I'm bringing this up right now because it's election season, and we just need to be aware as affiliates of what we can and cannot do during election season. So it's okay to educate candidates about the issues. Maybe we need more mental health beds in your area. We need more people in the schools to help serve as school-based mental health liaisons and get help for families or for students who need mental health services. It's okay to offer to be a resource to candidates, people running for office. Just don't play favorites. You need to treat all candidates the same way. You might have a favorite, but you have to, as a nonprofit, stay nonpartisan. You can actually issue questionnaires to candidates. You can ask them to state their opinions on certain bills or maybe certain issues in the community. And then you can also host a forum or a town hall. This is something that would be really great for our affiliates to do someday. You can't ask them to sign pledges. So while it's okay to give them a questionnaire, you can't ask them to sign a pledge saying that they promise to vote a certain way if they're elected. Okay, we can't do that. We can't publicly support one candidate. And so this is really important on social media if you're a NAMI member, or even if you're not. I mean, if you're involved with a nonprofit, you don't want to publicly support one candidate. You know, we do see this on like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and that gets a little bit dicey because then you could jeopardize your IRS status, your nonprofit status, if you're a nonprofit organization. And don't criticize a candidate or an official. And then finally, if you do host a town forum, like a town hall or some type of forum, you have to invite all candidates to the event. You can't play favorites. Important information. Individual citizens are not lobbyists. Okay, we talked about the law here in Tennessee a few slides back. You're a lobbyist if you get paid to lobby, okay? And none of you, I assume, are paid to lobby, so you are advocates. So we've talked a lot about what advocacy is and isn't, and now you know that you're, as an individual, you're an advocate, you're not a lobbyist. So I'm going to give you some examples of what lobbying or what advocacy looks like. Advocacy is speaking up. It is telling people about maybe some policies that need to change in your community. It could be something like getting more mental health services to people who are homeless in your community. Speaking up would be like going to your city commission and saying, hey, this is a problem. We have homeless people that need help. Let's get them some mental health services. Identifying the problem and speaking about it is what we're talking about. And then the next step is educating people. Here's what mental health services are available in our community. Here are some of the conditions that people I know are being treated for. We have a lot of people who are struggling with anxiety and depression. So you want to educate people about maybe the percentage of people who have anxiety and depression. Our NAMI.org website is a great resource. If you ever want to send people there, they have information about the different types of mental health conditions, statistics about mental health. You know, we typically hear the 1 in 5 people in the United States at any given time in a year are affected with a mental health condition. So that's educating. When we advocate, we have to know what problem we're working on, okay? Is it getting more school counselors? Is it maybe getting health plans to provide more behavioral health drugs, more more medications to help people with mental illness? Know what you're working on. You have to identify the problem and then develop answers. If you can, if you have a solution, you want to share that with the person you're talking to. So the question often comes up, well, what if I don't know the answer? What if I can't figure this out? Because let's face it, some of these issues that we deal with are pretty complex. And so you just want to work with people, work with the people in charge, the decision makers on an answer. And then finally, advocacy could simply be telling your story. Anybody who is part of NAMI, who is here today, who's involved with mental health advocacy has a story, either about themselves and their journey or their loved ones. And the stories can be very powerful. And those stories can influence decision makers and give them a reason to respond, a reason to act. It tugs at their heartstrings. So we'll get into that here in a minute. Advocacy could look like attending meetings, like meetings of your county commission, a meeting with your legislator, a meeting of your school board, writing emails to people who are influencers. Maybe it's the CEO of a company that you think needs to provide more mental health services to their employees. Writing op-eds. Op-eds are opinion pieces or editorials in the newspaper. You could write a letter to the editor. And I should have said on here also blogging. You can, if any of you blog, writing your story and calling for solutions is a type of advocacy. Again, if you are a NAMI affiliate, holding a forum in your community to bring people together to just talk about mental health. Maybe invite a school board member, county commissioners or city commissioners, the law enforcement agencies. Bringing them together to talk about the mental health needs of your communities as a form of advocacy. And then finally, engaging allies. So you want to look at other organizations that might have an interest in mental health, like veterans, the Veterans Administration. It could be domestic violence survivors or domestic violence coalitions. So reach out to other groups to help you with your advocacy effort. So at NAMI Tennessee, our advocacy efforts look like NAMI Smarts for Advocacy. This is like a 1-hour course that teaches people how to tell their story, where I was before, what I learned, how it changed me, and where I am now. So there's 4 of the 7 steps of building your story. Another type of advocacy that NAMI Tennessee engages in is a program called In Our Own Voice. So this is a program in which a presenter is like we train presenters on how to tell their story and teach them to speak before groups like the Rotary Club or the Kiwanis Club, or maybe it's a church. And NAMI Tennessee is accepting applications to become presenters, so I'll put a plug in for that. Another type of advocacy is our Day on the Hill. And that is when NAMI members come to the Capitol. We provide them talking points. We arrange for them to meet with legislators, the House and Senate members that represent them. And that is probably the ultimate form of advocacy. So those are just some examples of what NAMI Tennessee does. So here's a good advocacy tip. And oops, I'm going to go back. Okay. It's important to identify the right people to get to the people who are most going to be in a position to help you. So you want to get to the people who are the decision makers, the people who can say yes. And if you encounter people who say no, keep going up the chain until you find the right people who can say yes. So this is your school superintendent. This is a principal. This is a CEO or the head of HR. This is a legislator. And even in the political process, the legislature is broken down into committees. There are healthcare committees that deal with mental health. So you want to go to those people. Then you want to go to influencers. You want to go to the people in your community who can influence the decision makers. A lot of time, those influencers are people in the religious community, faith leaders, because many of those decision makers go to church. They have religious leaders they listen to. Influencers can also be a parent-teacher organization. So you're going to the people who have influence in your community. And then finally, storytellers like you. They become your champions. You can also tell people your story, and then the influencers can tell your story. Like once they find out what you've overcome or what you've dealt with in your mental health journey, your influencers can become storytellers and tell other people in the community, and they become your champions. So I often talk about, this is Representative Cindy Stevenson in Florida. She is a perfect example of a champion who I went to in Florida when I was with NAMI Florida. So Cindy had a family member growing up with a severe mental illness, and it affected her whole way of growing up. And when she came to the legislature, she wanted to do something about it. And well, at first, she was in office a couple years, and then I approached her about some mental health laws that were being discussed and some bills. And then she attended our NAMI Florida convention and learned so much, and she wanted to get involved. And she decided to, after seeing a presentation at the NAMI Florida conference, she decided to file a bill that would promote and give funding to programs in Florida that helped people, young people with psychotic breaks. It's known as first episode psychosis. And as some of you may know, it's so important when you have a psychotic break to get help early to stop the brain from deteriorating. And she was able to get the legislation passed and bring attention to, or she got it filed. I'm not sure, since I've been gone, if it passed, but she was able to bring attention to the issue. And that's because people at the conference told her their stories. And when you tell your story, it can convince decision makers and influencers like this representative to pick up your cause. It wins hearts and minds, and then they become loyal followers. Also, when we tell our stories, it shows that recovery is possible. And if it's not, then we come up with ways that it can be possible. We talk about that too. It creates compassion and understanding, and also reduces the stigma around mental illness. We have so many things happening in our society right now, especially after the pandemic, that mental health is really coming to the forefront of discussions in the media, in workplaces. So it's important that we talk about that. Sometimes our mental health journeys are not easy. And it takes guts to stand up and talk about it. Whether you have been involuntarily committed in an institution. I mean, some people are afraid to talk about that because they don't want to be labeled. Oftentimes, when family members have a loved one who died by suicide, there can be shame because of the stigma around that. But when we tell our stories and we're open about it, it can be healing. And we're doing a service to others by talking about it for those who can't talk about it or are too ashamed. And when we talk about it, there is strength in that. When we make ourselves vulnerable and able to tell our stories, that's where our power lies. Brene Brown talks a lot about that. It's strength through vulnerability. So you've decided you want to take up a cause, you want to advocate for it, you want to tell your story. So when you're doing this from the standpoint of an affiliate, a NAMI affiliate, what might happen is you'll start to get media attention, which can attract more members, which can attract donations to your organization, because people see that you have the courage to stand up and talk about it and want to make a difference. You might get attention from public officials who sit up and take notice. Maybe they didn't realize that your affiliate was even in the community. How many times does that happen? Where you run into people and they're like, wait, NAMI, who are you? And where have you been? And what can you do? So when we start talking about our mental health journeys, public officials will start paying attention. Community leaders, same thing. So that could be chambers of commerce, maybe inviting you in to speak, or wanting to learn more about what other resources are in the community. You start attracting families and peers to your organization. Just by you standing up and talking, you give other people permission to do the same, and like attracts like, and they will start coming to your affiliate. And also organizations like schools and churches will reach out to you as a resource and want to learn more. But what about if you're an individual? What do you get out of standing up, putting yourself out there and being an advocate? Well, it creates visibility around mental health. And I run into a lot of people who've had mental health challenges, and they say to me, look, I've been through this, I learned, I have had this experience, and I want to make a difference for other people. So when you start advocating, you create visibility for your affiliate or your cause. It could lead to better laws for other people, maybe more hospital beds, getting them out of the local acute care hospital and into the mental health facility. It can lead to more funding being put towards mental health and better policies. Maybe that's in the workplace, in hospitals. And your advocacy efforts can bring meaningful changes to the lives of many people. Those laws, the funding, the new policies affect tens of thousands of Tennesseans. And finally, it may bring healing. Like we talked earlier, it can be incredibly rewarding and worthwhile to share your story and want to make a difference. And when you do make that difference, it can be bring a lot of joy. And even telling your story to one person can make a difference. So we will stop there. And wanted to see if you had any questions. A lot of times what we do during this time is I can help affiliates troubleshoot, or maybe if you have some advocacy ideas, how to go about that. So if you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer.
How does advocacy and fundraising go together?
Ah, yes, that is a great question. So remember how I talked about the outcomes of advocacy, how it can bring attention to public officials? Like I saw you nod your head when I said that. And first of all, I want to see a show of hands. How many of you have been talking about NAMI or like in your community and people didn't even know what NAMI was? Have you run
That's
into
like
that?
my therapist.
Okay, so your therapist didn't even know. Okay. So when we start talking about advocacy and talking about NAMI, and things that we're trying to do to change laws, to bring better mental health policies to our community, what happens is you are in a position to then show donors how to that you can move the needle, so that that's a way to move the needle, like public influence, and that you're an influencer and people will be attracted to you and your mission and want to give you money. You see, so advocacy is a great way to raise funds for your affiliate. And a way that you could do that is, say, if you have a meeting with a county commissioner, you ask permission first. Maybe you can, or maybe it's a city council member. You get a picture with that person, and then you post on Facebook, like, hey, we just had a meeting with so-and-so about this. And if you're interested, join our efforts. And you want to start creating a mailing list of people, and then you can eventually give them an email, a fundraising appeal, an appeal letter, and then ask for money to help you pursue advocacy efforts on behalf of people with mental health challenges.
Right.
So that's a great way to do it.
Okay. I'm also because one thing right now, I mean, that everyone's struggling with housing. After the 3-day hold, where is the healthcare and the next step? So, you know,
So yeah, so housing is a really a tough one because it involves transportation, it involves employment, it involves buying land. And let's face it, right now in Tennessee and many places in the country, housing is expensive. So this is a situation where you want to join other organizations. Remember earlier on a slide I said create allies. You want to partner up with your local homeless coalition, which most counties have. What that does is it shows them that you're serious about the issue, that you are a resource. They might not have even known that you exist as the NAMI affiliate. So that would be one way to go about it.
Yeah, that perfect sense. Thank you.
So let's see, here's a question here. Do you have any ideas on how or who to whom parents of adult children with severe mental illness can write to? I don't know what legislator to write to or what to say. Are there form letters? I want to help, but not sure what actionable items are. And you're from Memphis. Thank you for being here. So yes, there are a few people. You could write to Commissioner Marie Williams. She always likes hearing if people are struggling to have to get services. She wants to know. So Commissioner Williams is over the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. So if you are having problems getting services for your adult child, she needs to know. Also, the person in Memphis who represents your home, your neighborhood, that would be a really great person to go to. So Memphis, being a big city, has several legislators who represent the area, a House member, a senator. So what you want to do is go to a website. It's the tn.gov website. That's the whole Tennessee government operations website. And you want to type in the search, find my legislator. And it will take you to a page that will allow you to type in your address, and then you can see your legislator, your House member and senator who represents where you live. So you want to write those people. And typically leading up to our day on the Hill, we have a session on how to tell your story. And I'll tell you about that later. So any other questions?
Yeah, LinkedIn. How would you use LinkedIn for advocacy?
That's a great question. So many of you who use social media, you may know that Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, they're all geared towards different audiences. So Facebook would be more toward people my age, 40s, 50s, 60s. TikTok, generally younger people. Instagram, generally younger people. LinkedIn is for professionals. It's where thought leaders would be. So maybe you have your CEOs, your legislators, the people who like think big, they think strategy. So to use LinkedIn, the way I do it is to post an interesting newspaper article. Let's just say maybe a report comes out talking about suicide rates among young people. So that would be a great place to post it. So that's a statistic, and promote your affiliate. Like, we're with NAMI Clarksville. We're looking for ways to address this issue. How would you go about it? That would be a really good LinkedIn post. So you want to post news stories, reports, statistics, facts. So in Clarksville, it could be something like, we're seeing a lot of veterans in our community struggle with homelessness. And then maybe promote yourself as a resource. And you always want to try to engage your audience. So you might say, how else can we address this issue? The cool thing that happens is the right person might see that and say, wait, we'd like to help you. We'd like to partner. And you start building your, I call it your fan club. And it's basically a mailing list of people who will support you.
Yeah, it's definitely a different image than you present on Facebook.
Right.
Is it appropriate to work with Miranda on that, or?
I think so. So Miranda is NAMI Tennessee's new marketing director. I think that would be a great opportunity. Yes. Yes, I would encourage you to reach out to her.
Or okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this question. If you could advocate for anything and think big, if you could change just one thing regarding mental health, what would it be? And you can type it in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, I'll call on you. If you had the power to change one thing around mental health, what would it be? Chelsea, yes.
Um, I would really like to see crisis intervention training be required for like all law enforcement and first responders.
Great. So I'm curious, would you feel comfortable talking why that's important to you?
Yeah, just in general, I've seen posts online where people have emergencies and law enforcement come and respond, and they don't respond appropriately. And my mom lives in Alaska, and she had a mental health emergency, and she was not treated the way that she should have been treated. She was responded. Her her outbursts were responded to with aggression, and she
Right.
wasn't treated with like empathy and compassion. And so I just really think that, like, I know Nami's working with some people who are like, oh yeah, I'm interested in that, but I really think that it should be required.
Great. So you have a personal story.
Mhm.
And so that makes it all the more compelling when you advocate. So how do you think you could advocate for that?
I think finding someone else or a group that already has taken it, maybe like a group of law enforcement officers who have taken it and like know why it's important, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are you familiar with an organization called CIT?
I know the class, but I don't know a lot about it.
So there is the class, the Crisis Intervention Team Training, but there's an actual CIT organization that you can
Oh,
join. And you can help them advocate and be a storyteller for why it's so important. And NAMI Tennessee also is a CIT trainer. So, just being a part of NAMI Tennessee, you can, I'm not sure, like right now, we have a whole CIT division department that, like I said, they train throughout the state. So anything you can do to be supportive of them, it might be as simple as liking any pictures on Facebook that we post. So, but joining the CIT organization might be good, or maybe contacting your local legislator and writing them a letter about that, saying we think it should be mandatory, or writing the letters of the people at the CIT organization. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else have an idea for what they would like? If they could change anything, what would it be?
Adequate rehabilitation time and better transition services when people go back into the community.
Right. Why are the transition services important?
That's where you would get your housing, getting your doctor, your prescriptions. I just actually last Friday did a CIT training for the Montgomery, for Clarksville. And there was a few of us there from different agencies, and I learned about this community of hope. So, which is a community resource. So that's good. I can't wait to start partnering and talking to him, because there is some transition services there.
Oh,
So that was
good,
a resource I just discovered.
good. And so your affiliate could identify each year, maybe two, like we talked about earlier, 2 or 3 things you want to advocate for in your community. And each year you just chip away at it a little bit at a time. Because it's important to know advocacy can take a while. The problems do not happen overnight, and they're not going to be resolved overnight. It could take months, if not years, to resolve. But it's important to keep talking about it, because solutions can happen.
Mhm. Oh yeah, I think I definitely think it is. I mean, it's people are talking about it and recognizing, you know.
Right. And the great thing is when you start talking about it, whether it's posting online, sharing online your mental health journey, people will then someday come to you and say, I understand that you've been through this. How can you help me? What should I do? When we start sharing our stories and start promoting change, we become the experts. And you don't have to be a paid lobbyist to be an expert, by the way. Your story and your journey with mental illness makes you the expert. Okay. Well, I'm going to stop the recording, and I encourage you to stay on because I've got a few other announcements. But thank you so much for being here for the What is Advocacy training. Let's see. I'm going to stop the